So I decided that since I'm a huge fan of Frank Miller and a huge fan of Daredevil, I thought I might as well take a look at these two issues of Daredevil. Obviously, these issues, if you couldn't tell by the cover of this one, of 182, these issues are pretty important because these are the death of Elektra. And I just kind of wanted to go through these and take a look at Miller's early work for Marvel, well before Dark Knight Returns. I think this was 82. So about, what was it, 4 or 5 years before he did Dark Knight Returns. And you can see a lot of what he did in Dark Knight Returns in these issues of Daredevil. I surprisingly have not actually read these two issues. I used to have the Miller Jansen Daredevil Omnibus, and I read a lot of the earlier issues. I think I read all the way up to, God, I don't even know what number, but I did not get to the death of Elektra. And I just kind of wanted to just go in here and look at some of his work that would eventually lead up to Dark Knight Returns, which is probably one of my favorite comic book series of all time, and I'm sure it's most people's favorite because there's just something about it that's just resonates with people who read comics and artists, and pretty much anybody who's into any kind of comic book material. So let's just take a look at this. By the way, it's very weird. I'd noticed this. Some fucking douchebag cut this, which makes me not very happy. But anyway, so here we go. We're taking a look. So obviously, Frank Miller doing the story and the art, and Klaus Janson doing the inks. I think a lot of people were a little too hard on Klaus Janson as a penciler. I think as an inker, he gets the respect that he deserves, but as a penciler, he really doesn't. And I think he's one of those guys that kind of tries to like step outside the norm of like what a normal comic book penciler would do. He's very experimental in some cases, but when he needs to pencil normally, his stuff looks great. But I know when he did some stuff on the Punisher, his pencils looked a bit weird. And then I know he also took over Daredevil after Frank Miller left the book. And I think that there are some people who don't particularly like his pencils, but I think his pencils are great, and obviously his inks are amazing. You can definitely tell that his finishes are a huge part of why I personally think Miller's Daredevil run was so successful. I mean, obviously, Miller's a great penciler and a great storyteller, but Klaus kind of gets, thrown to the side sometimes. But you'll definitely be able to see how much of an impact his inks really do have. So we get in here, and I just absolutely love Miller's drawing. This is back when I feel like Miller was trying to say, hey, I'm a real comic book artist. Like, take me seriously. I know he was a huge Neil Adams fan, and I think even Neil Adams was maybe his mentor. And you can definitely tell how much of an impact, Neil Adams had on his work. Because, I mean, man, absolutely great art. Very creative. That's the other thing, is I feel like comic books at this time were kind of cookie cutter. And Miller was going, hey, I'm going to make it more cinematic. And he definitely did a great job at that. I absolutely love that drawing. And I love that drawing as well. It draws one of the best bullseyes, for sure, in my opinion. And the action, man. So much movement, so much force. He's really pushing the figure as far as he possibly can. I mean, there's no doubt about it why people consider Miller probably the best Daredevil artist, it's because of the fact that he really just knew how to push the figure. The most important thing for him was, how can I make my figures not look stiff? How can I put as much movement? You can definitely tell he was a huge fan of like Bruce Lee and Kung Fu movies, and that stuff really made his artwork kind of go to that next level. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people love Miller so much, and I can totally understand why. But I mean, you get great drawings like this too, and he's very good at the close-up of the eyes. Very large eyes, something that is very interesting about Miller. I know that other artists did large eyes as well, but I don't know. I think Miller he's just really great at kind of getting that close up and getting that emotion in the eyes. Awesome. I absolutely love that drawing. A bullseye. I mean, man, if he's not the best Daredevil artist, I definitely think he might be the best bullseye artist. What an awesome character as well. You know, when he was designed, it's very simple, but it works. You know, nobody talks about Daredevil and his rogues gallery. Everybody talks about Spider-Man. I don't know. I think Daredevil has some very very interesting villains. I mean, I know a lot of the Daredevil villains are Spider-Man villains, but I mean Bullseye, kind of, you know, Daredevil's own. So we have a great scene here, and that's the thing about Miller is his storytelling is great. I know exactly what I'm looking at here. He blinds the guy, or tries to blind the guy, spits something in his eye. The guy shoots him. He puts his hands out, breaks the cuffs, takes the gun. It's great storytelling from Miller. Maybe not the greatest penciler of all time, but man, could he tell a great story. I love that scene. And the other thing is Miller's one of those guys. I feel like, you know, you don't see a lot of background here, but then boom, he throws a background at you. I love that too. The gun going off the panel. All right, so we're getting the story that Bullseye escapes. Yeah. Absolutely awesome. I just love the movement. I love the character. Miller's one of those guys that, like, when you're practicing drawing and you're going, I really want to add life to my drawing. I want it to be less stiff. Miller's one of those guys that you can kind of look at his art and you can go, okay, I see the movement. That torso and that pelvis never line up for Miller. I say that as that actually lines up there, but when there's action, it's not stiff at all. So I mean, he definitely is going, okay, Bullseye is nuts. He's crazy. We know that. And I think that it might very well be that he's kind of going, I don't get to do Batman, so I'm going to do Batman through Daredevil, and I'm going to make Bullseye kind of his Joker. And that works. I mean, that absolutely works. I don't think as iconic as the Joker, but still iconic in his own way. So we get Elektra here. Absolutely love that. That is a fucking phenomenal. And I mean, just imagine seeing that 11 by 17, in pencils. Absolutely amazing. Who colored this? So it looks like Jansen also colored it as well. So this is before Lynn Varley. Okay. Absolutely love the colors, the red. I mean, Jansen was an experimental guy, and I don't know if he was experimental right out the gate or if Miller drove him to be a little bit more experimental. But the thing about these guys is that you can definitely see how much of an impact they both had on each other when you see their stuff that they work on separate from one another. But I mean, this panel, I mean, just the emotion in her face. I mean, this is, when people talk about Frank Miller, I don't, it's not an exaggeration how great he is, or was, however you want to say it, but I still think he's great. Man, look at that movement. Great movement. I mean, just, man, amazing panels. Love that. I mean, it's just, you can definitely tell that Miller took his time. Like, if I tried to draw something like that, it would take me quite a long time to kind of even just get the gesture, because you're going, okay, well, the body's kind of going like that, and then, okay, I know that the pelvis is a little bit up, it's a little bit above, but it kind of lines up, and it's just you're trying to figure out how everything lines up. And it takes a while to do something like that, but Miller's one of those guys you can absolutely practice from. You can look at his work and you can practice from it, and you will learn a lot, because I feel like the movement, the emotion is more important than the anatomy, which is because when you're a comic book artist, you don't actually need to be anatomically correct. If you want to be anatomically correct, become a fine artist. If you want to be a comic book artist, the motion is the most important thing. And if you look through How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, the thing that, Stan Lee and John Buscema try to tell you is it's all in the movement of the body. There's not a single chapter on anatomy in that book, and I don't think that, you're going to learn how to draw to draw the comics the Marvel Way, but the most important thing in that book, and I absolutely agree with it, is how you move the figure. Very, very important. And man, I mean, there's a lot of movement in this book. I haven't read this book. This is the first time I've opened up this book. I think I remember, maybe I did read it in the omnibus that I used to have, but I don't remember reading it. But also, I didn't read it from the standpoint of being an artist. I read it from the standpoint of being a casual reader. But as an artist now, I'm looking at this and I'm going, this might be the best thing Miller's ever done. And, I don't know if it's, I mean, that could be debated, with Dark Knight Returns. But, man, I mean, the storytelling here, the movement, and it all reads perfectly. It all reads great. And the emotion and Bullseye. I mean, you could tell, like, you have this crazy guy, and he goes, you could tell in his face, oh, shit, does she, is she gonna get me? Is she gonna beat me? And then, of course, we get the famous scene that we've seen of him sticking the sai into her, and it goes through her shirt. It goes through her cloth, or whatever the fuck she's wearing. It goes through the cloth, and it comes up, and she's done for. And then she crawls back. I mean, look at the crawl. She crawls back to Matt's place. He finds her. And then you see the reaction. And she's dead. Absolutely amazing. I mean, let's go back to this again. Real quick. So, she almost gets one on him. She's on top of him. He knocks her off. She kicks him. I mean, all the movement is great. He gets back on top of her. Throws a card. Definitely, I think I want to do the Joker, but I can't. She's on the ground. He picks her up. And, instead of saying, hey, I beat you, I'm going to let you go, he goes, nah, I'm going to finish it. And then he just sticks the sai right into her and lets her go because he knows she's going to die. And he's sending a message to Daredevil. Absolutely fucking amazing storytelling. You know, and it's kind of like that, you know, it's kind of like when Gwen Stacy dies in Spider-Man, you know, Daredevil wants revenge, you know, and this is, I mean, it's obvious that he wants revenge. And now he's going to come back and he's going to kick the shit out of Bullseye. Absolutely amazing. Love the storytelling. I love the shadow, you know, or the, not the shadow, that's the fucking word I'm trying to think of. But anyways, you know, the silhouette. Thank you, brain. I love looking at the silhouette, you know, and you can definitely tell. And I love the ad break there. Daredevil's going to beat the fuck out of him. Like, there's no question about it. You know, and the other great thing about, you know, Miller is, when you're reading this, you actually don't know if Daredevil's going to win. But obviously, Daredevil's going to win, right? I mean, why would he lose? You know, and then, I mean, look at this page. Man. Man, what a great page. I love the coloring in this book, too. Absolutely amazing. All right, let's go to 180. Let's go to 182. If you have not read these books before, and I'm actually gonna read them after this because I'm shocked I've never read them before. But man, look at that drawing. Is it still? Just want to make sure. Frank Miller, Klaus Janson. It's still the same. So literally, it's a two-man book here. Janson is doing the inking and the coloring. I love that. I love that panel. Just absolutely amazing. Is that the Punisher? Interesting. Looks like the Punisher, so it's probably the Punisher. Man, just great figure work. I mean, when he's like kind of lifting himself up, you can it feels like he's lifting himself up, you know. And you'd be surprised how many guys in comics didn't know how to do that. You know, who didn't know how to kind of put emotion, or not emotion, but like weight into their figures. You know, when you have these scenes where like, you know, Matt's just talking to people. I mean, they had, you know, interesting perspectives and things like that. It's not, you know, oh, they're talking to each other in a room. You know, let's move the camera around. So, Daredevil's going to go and confront the Kingpin. Again, just amazing movement. And that, you know, that black background really brings out the color. I mean, Jansen, man, is absolute genius. You can tell, I mean, he's got longer legs here. The proportions aren't perfect. But it works. I mean, he gets it across. I mean, and that's the thing about Miller is Miller's work was never perfect, but it worked. And it you know, I mean, the storytelling's there. The movement is there. The anatomy, you know, he pays more attention to form, I think, than he does anatomy. But it's great stuff. It's absolutely, I mean, even, you know, Foggy putting his shoes on, it works. You know, you know, it's kind of expressing movement and weight. That Punisher face is a little stupid, but I'll let it go. But I think at this point, I mean, I don't know if anybody really kind of understood the Punisher at this point, because Punisher had only been in like maybe a couple issues of comics. I don't even think he had his series yet. I think his series came in like 86 or 80, maybe even 85 or something around there. So, I mean, the Punisher was kind of this throw-in character at this point. So, kind of nobody really cared about the Punisher at this point. Absolutely amazing. I'm trying to read it along. So, yeah, absolutely amazing comic. That's really the only words I have for it. I mean, other than the fact that Miller is Miller. I mean, an absolute heavyweight in comics. Miller was, um, and nobody had any idea that Elektra was gonna die. You know, and he did a great job. And yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing comic. I mean, it looks great. I mean, I just love the scenes. I mean, it's just when you look at something like this, when you look at these panels, when you look at these pages, when you look at this movement, this is a comic book artist who is obviously knows exactly what he's doing, and there's not very many comic book artists that can do something at this level, you know, just absolutely, just I don't have any other words for it than just mind-blowingly, just unbelievably fucking amazing. So yeah, that's Miller doing the death of Elektra. So if you've never seen it before, it's kind of interesting to look at. And if you're one of those people who goes, I don't understand why people like Frank Miller so much, you take a look at this and you go, oh, okay, I kind of get it now. He's at least from an artistic standpoint, and even a storytelling standpoint, and really that's all comic books are. But you'd be shocked by how many comic books that you read that don't do what he did in these two issues. At least in this issue, effectively, yeah, effective, whatever. Who don't do it to the level that he does it, because as much as I love Dark Knight Returns is a little bit different than this. It's I don't know. I just feel like this is just. I mean, I love how this is the page I open up to, because it's just, and it's right in the middle. You can tell. So Miller knew exactly what he was doing on placement. And then of course this absolutely just great drawing. So yeah, happy I could go through that. Now I'm actually gonna read it, because I've never read it before. So I'm opening it up and looking at it, at least to my knowledge, the first time. And if I had seen it in the past and read it in the past, I didn't actually remember it. So great comic, great comic. At least looks wise and storytelling wise, from what I can see, absolutely amazing. And sometimes you don't need the dialogue; you just need to be able to look at the pictures and go, "This is great storytelling." And this book would have worked as a silent comic. It would have worked beautifully. So. That's Miller Daredevil.